Dr. Alara Keene stared at the flickering console in front of her, the once vibrant lights of the research station now dimmed to a haunting glow. The station, which had once been bustling with activity, was now a hollow shell. The hum of the equipment, the chatter of colleagues, the bustle of experiments, everything had faded into silence, a silence that stretched on for years. Alara was one of the few who had survived the initial catastrophe that had left the station abandoned. The crew, all of them, were gone, vanished without a trace, and the cause of their disappearance was an enigma that gnawed at her every waking moment. The station's once cutting-edge technology had shut down mysteriously, leaving her alone in the vast expanse of uncharted space. Food was scarce, power was dwindling, and her sanity was beginning to fray at the edges. Yet somehow she had managed to survive, spending the long days staring into the cold, empty stars, hoping for a sign, a way out. But that night, something strange happened. As Alara sifted through the faint signals of distant galaxies, hoping to find some kind of anomaly to investigate, one signal stood out, a faint blip far from any known space lanes. It wasn't just noise, it was deliberate, purposeful. The signal seemed to come from a distant, unknown source, something that wasn't on any of her charts, something that shouldn't even be possible so far from the edge of civilization. Her heart skipped a beat. She had thought that she was truly alone. Her mind had long ago accepted the isolation. But this was different. With shaky hands, she adjusted her console, trying to amplify the signal. The noise grew louder, clearer, until a voice crackled through the speakers, distorting but unmistakable. "We are coming for you." The message sent a chill down her spine. The words were simple, yet they carried an unspoken weight. Who was it? Who could it be? She scanned the signal's trajectory, her mind racing. It wasn't from any ship she knew of. The signature was unfamiliar, strange, and yet there was something oddly familiar about it. The idea of another human ship, one that was so far from known space, seemed impossible. But here it was, real and undeniable. A human ship, seemingly lost, just like her. Her mind tried to make sense of it. The years of solitude had made her cautious, even paranoid. She had been alone for so long that the idea of anyone else, any other humans, out there seemed almost too much to hope for. What if this was a trap? What if they weren't human at all? Her thoughts spiraled as the darkness of deep space loomed all around her. Yet, despite the uncertainty, there was a flicker of hope. The message, though unsettling, was unmistakably clear. There was life out there. There were others, and they were coming. Her fingers trembled as she tried to send a Jabba response. The ship's signal was faint, almost on the edge of her reach, but Alara wasn't ready to give up. Her pulse raced as she worked desperately to increase the power to her transmitter. But as she tried to calibrate it, the signal began to fade, like a dying ember. The gap between her and this mysterious ship was vast, and even with all her technical skill, she wasn't sure she could bridge it in time. A single thought plagued her. What if they got here too late? What if they were already gone by the time they arrived? Hours passed, but the message kept replaying in her head. "We are coming for you." The words echoed through her mind. A promise, a hope, a challenge. Could she trust it? Was this real? The deep, lingering silence around her seemed to mock her. Doubts? But somewhere inside, Alara knew one thing. She couldn't afford to ignore this. She had to believe that someone, something, was out there, willing to come to her rescue. The years of isolation had eroded her sense of time, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone anymore. The unknown ship was out there, somewhere, and they were coming. Alara sat in front of the console, her hands trembling as the words, "We are coming for you," continued to echo in her mind. The strange signal had ignited a spark of hope she had long buried beneath the crushing weight of isolation. Yet, as much as she wanted to believe in the promise of rescue, a deep sense of unease clung to her. The signal was not a simple distress call. It was a deliberate invitation. The question gnawed at her. Why would anyone venture so far from the safety of known space into such dangerous, uncharted territory? And who were these people, if they were even human? The closer the ship got, the more her curiosity and suspicion grew. It didn't feel right. Her eyes were fixed on the radar screen, watching as the massive shape of the ship materialized on the edge of her sensors. The ship, identified as the Leviathan, was unlike anything Alara had ever seen. It was ancient, its hull battered and worn, as though it had been drifting through space for centuries. It didn't belong here, so far from any known space lanes, so far from civilization. The ship's size was staggering, dwarfing the station she had called home for so long. Alara couldn't help but wonder, what had this ship been through? What kind of crew would risk everything to journey into the deepest reaches of space? As her console blinked, a new message appeared. This one from the ship itself. Captain Noah Hale introduced himself in a calm, authoritative voice, confirming that they were indeed on their way to the station. His words were clipped, precise, but beneath the surface, Alara could detect something unsettling. It was as if Captain Hale was holding something back, as if he had seen too much in his time to still be fully trusting of the galaxy around him. His voice had a weight to it, one that suggested years of hardship and secrets buried deep within the ship's long journey. When he offered her the chance to board the Leviathan, his words were careful, too careful, as though he wasn't sure whether she would accept or even survive the trip. Alara's mind raced. She was desperate for human contact, any contact, but something about the offer felt wrong. She had learned over the years to trust her instincts, and right now, her instincts were telling her to tread carefully. Yet, despite her doubts, she found herself preparing to leave the station. She had no other choice. With no resources left, and only the faintest flicker of hope, the unknown ship was her last chance. Before she could make her final decision, Alara did something she hadn't done in years. She researched. The data she pulled from the station's old systems painted a strange picture. Her scans revealed unusual readings around the station, strange fluctuations in the energy patterns, odd pulses of electromagnetic activity that didn't fit any known patterns. And worse, the nebula nearby, once thought to be a safe barrier, was showing signs of something far more ominous. Something was out there. She cross-referenced everything she could, and what she found made her blood run cold. The Zarkon, an aggressive and hostile alien species, were lurking just beyond the nebula. The same signal that had drawn the Leviathan to her station could have easily alerted the Zarkon to its presence. It made sense. The Zarkon were known for their ruthlessness and their pursuit of anything valuable. She feared that they had already taken notice of her station's existence and were heading toward it, drawn by the very signal that was supposed to bring her salvation. Alara's mind raced with possibilities. Was the human ship a beacon of hope or a distraction to lure her into a trap? Was Captain Hale's crew really as trustworthy as they appeared, or were they simply another piece in a much darker puzzle? As the hours passed and the Leviathan drew closer, her anxiety grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that her actions were leading her deeper into the unknown. Could she trust the humans aboard the ship? Or were they, too, being pulled into something far beyond their control? And what about the Zarkon? Were they already closing in? The tension in the air felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Alara knew she had little time left to make her decision. Every moment counted. As she prepared to board the Leviathan, her thoughts were a whirlwind of uncertainty. There was a part of her that desperately wanted to believe in the promise of rescue, but another part of her, the part that had survived this long, was screaming for caution. She could only hope that she had made the right choice. The deeper mysteries of space were closing in, and Alara was about to find out just how far they would take her. Alara's heart pounded as she stepped onto the Leviathan, the vast, imposing ship that had come to her rescue. The moment she crossed the threshold, she was greeted by the hum of advanced machinery and the steady pulse of life support systems. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen, both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The corridors were wide, filled with the soft glow of alien technology, yet there was something oddly familiar about it all. The crew, though, was what truly stood out. As Alara moved through the ship, she observed the men and women who made it their home. They weren't like the civilians or scientists she had worked with on her research station. Each of them exuded an air of capability, confidence, and resourcefulness, qualities that immediately made Alara feel both intrigued and out of place. She couldn't help but notice how they moved with purpose, how their eyes never seemed to linger on her in uncertainty, as if they had seen far worse than anything she could imagine. Captain Noah Hale was the first to personally greet her. His presence was commanding but not intimidating, a quiet authority that seemed to come from years of experience in a world few others had witnessed. His crew followed his lead, each one different but equally competent in their own way. Alara was introduced to them, engineers, tactical officers, scientists, and soldiers, all of them with an unmistakable spark in their eyes. As they shook her hand or nodded in acknowledgement, Alara noticed a subtle undercurrent of something more. They weren't just skilled, they were capable of surviving and thriving in ways other races simply couldn't match. There was an unspoken understanding between them, an understanding of the dangers lurking in the galaxy and the fierce will to face them head-on. Captain Hale took her to the command center, where he explained the true nature of the Leviathan. Alara had assumed it was just another exploration ship, a vessel designed for deep space missions. But as Hale began to speak, it became clear that the Leviathan was no ordinary ship. It had been created by the United Earth Coalition, a secret, military organization that had operated in the shadows, far from the eyes of the galactic community. The technologies aboard the Leviathan were light years ahead of anything Alara had ever encountered. Ships from other species, with their advanced weapons and vast fleets, were still primitive compared to what humanity had developed. What struck Alara the most was the philosophy behind these advancements, humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to survive in even the most hostile environments. This, Hale explained, was what set them apart from every other species in the galaxy. Alara listened in awe as Captain Hale spoke about humanity's drive to evolve and overcome, no matter the odds. While other civilizations relied on brute force, or overwhelming numbers, humans had discovered something far more powerful, the ability to outthink their enemies. Every weapon aboard the Leviathan was designed to be as much a tool for adaptation as it was a weapon of destruction. The ship itself had been engineered to learn, to evolve, and to counter any threat it faced. Luna, the ship's AI, chimed in, with its own insight, explaining how it had been programmed to adapt not only to physical dangers, but to the mental and emotional challenges that could arise during long periods of isolation or combat. The AI, with its calm, almost soothing voice, seemed to echo Hale's words. Humanity's true strength lay not in numbers or firepower, but in its relentless determination to survive. Alara was stunned. In all her years of research, she had never come across a species or a ship quite like this. The Leviathan wasn't just a military vessel. It was a living, breathing testament to the power of human ingenuity. The crew aboard the ship wasn't just a group of trained professionals. They were a product of this philosophy. People who had been honed by years of survival in hostile environments, each one more than capable of overcoming whatever the universe could throw at them. And as Hale continued to explain the depths of the Coalition's operations, Alara realized just how much humanity had advanced in secret. The galaxy, with all its powerful and ancient civilizations, had no idea what humanity was capable of. The other races feared brute strength and superior numbers, but the Leviathan was proof that humanity had created something far more dangerous: the ability to think, adapt, and outmaneuver any threat, no matter how powerful. As she stood there, absorbing the magnitude of what Captain Hale had revealed, Alara couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She had always seen humans as explorers, pioneers, but now she understood. They weren't just survivors. They were warriors in the truest sense of the word. And if humanity's presence in the galaxy was as unknown as it seemed, Alara knew that the Leviathan and its crew were about to change everything. With their unique combination of intellect, innovation, and sheer determination, they were a force that even the most advanced alien civilizations would soon come to fear. And Alara, once isolated and helpless, had found herself in the company of something truly extraordinary. The game had changed, and humanity was poised to dominate. The quiet hum of the Leviathan was suddenly shattered by a blaring alarm. Alara, who had only just begun to adjust to life aboard the massive ship, shot upright from her seat, her heart racing. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their expressions tense but determined. Captain Hale's voice echoed through the comms, steady and unwavering. "Brace for impact," he commanded. The Zarkon had arrived. Alara had heard of the Zarkon before: brutal, ruthless, and technologically superior to almost every known species. Their ships were massive, their weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single strike. Their reputation alone had been enough to send shivers down the spines of even the most powerful galactic empires. And now, they were here, targeting the Leviathan, seeing humanity as a threat to their dominance. The moment the first wave of Zarkon ships arrived on the radar, the crew knew they were facing an enemy far beyond their expectations. Their weapons tore into the Leviathan's outer hull with precision, disabling the ship's external defenses with terrifying speed. Alara watched in disbelief as the energy shields flickered and died, unable to withstand the sheer firepower of the Zarkon assault. But what the Zarkon didn't count on was the resourcefulness of the humans aboard the Leviathan. While the enemy's overwhelming numbers threatened to crush them, Captain Hale remained calm, his voice never wavering as he issued orders. "Initiate stealth protocol," he commanded, his words cutting through the chaos. The ship's engines powered down and the once brilliant lights dimmed to near nothingness. Humanity had developed stealth technology, an advanced form of cloaking that could make even a ship the size of the Leviathan virtually invisible to enemy sensors. With every passing moment, the crew's desperation grew, but there was no panic. Instead, there was a quiet resolve. This was not the end. This was the moment they would fight for their survival, not with overwhelming power, but with ingenuity and sheer will. Alara, now fully integrated into the crew, stood alongside them, her mind racing for a solution. The attack was relentless, but her years of research into space anomalies and alien technology had given her insights that others might have missed. She was sure the station's data had more to offer than she initially thought, something hidden deep within the research that could help turn the tide of the battle. With a mix of determination and curiosity, she accessed the ship's old systems, tapping into files that hadn't been touched in years. The pieces began to fall into place. There, buried in the depths of the research data, was a reference to a hidden weapon, one that had been kept secret even from the crew. The weapon was said to be a prototype, an experimental technology developed by the United Earth Coalition in response to the rising threat of alien forces like the Zarkon. But no one knew if it was operational, let alone capable of defeating such an advanced enemy. Alara wasted no time. She brought the data to Captain Hale, who was already coordinating the crew's movements with cool precision. His eyes narrowed as he studied the information she had uncovered. "This could be our last chance," he said, his voice resolute. "Prepare the crew. We're going to make this work." With no time to spare, Ilara and the engineering team worked tirelessly to access the hidden weapon's location. The ship's internal systems groaned under the pressure, but they pushed forward, knowing that humanity's survival depended on it. Outside, the Zarkon fleet continued its assault, their ships closing in with deadly intent. Yet, even in the face of overwhelming odds, the Leviathan's crew held their ground. They had learned from the very beginning that it wasn't brute strength that would save them, but their ability to adapt and think on their feet. The stealth technology had bought them time, but time was running out. As the weapon systems hummed to life, Ilara's pulse quickened. They were about to use something the Zarkon had never encountered: humanity's ability to innovate under pressure. With a deafening roar, the prototype weapon activated. The ship's hull vibrated as an unknown energy pulse shot toward the Zarkon fleet. Ilara held her breath, her eyes fixed on the screens, waiting for the result. The first blast from the weapon hit its target. One of the Zarkon ships disintegrated in a burst of light. The crew erupted into cheers, but there was no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over, and the Zarkon would undoubtedly adapt. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ilara allowed herself to hope. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not a species to be underestimated. As long as they had the will to survive, there was no force in the universe that could defeat them. The fight for survival had only just begun. The battle seemed endless, an unrelenting storm of chaos and fire. The Leviathan rocked with each impact from the Zarkon's weapons, yet the crew held firm. Every member, from the engineers to the tactical officers, worked in perfect sync, adjusting, adapting, and rethinking their strategies at every turn. Captain Hale's calm voice cut through the noise, issuing orders with unshakable confidence. They had faced overwhelming odds before, but this was different. The Zarkon were relentless, their weapons deadly, and their numbers overwhelming. Yet the humans aboard the Leviathan had something the Zarkon could never understand: an ability to adapt on the fly, to think beyond what was possible. This was the edge that made humanity a force to be reckoned with. As the enemy ships bore down on them, Captain Hale and his crew executed a daring maneuver. They had learned to manipulate the Zarkon's own technology, flaws in their systems that no one else had ever noticed. In a high-stakes move, they hijacked a Zarkon weapon, turning it against the attackers. With a resounding blast, one of the enemy's ships was destroyed, sending a shockwave through their ranks. The tables began to turn. For the first time, the Zarkon hesitated. They had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. What had once been a desperate struggle was now a fierce, calculated fight. The Leviathan's crew pushed forward, using every advantage they could to outsmart their foes, turning the Zarkon's own tactics against them. The clash was nothing short of epic, each moment a battle for survival, each decision a matter of life or death. Ilara watched in awe as the crew of the Leviathan continued to defy the odds. Their determination was unwavering, their resolve unbreakable. Despite the ongoing assault, despite the overwhelming power of the Zarkon, there was a palpable sense of hope. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting to prove that it belonged in the stars, that it had a place in the galaxy. And now, with the tide shifting in their favor, the victory was within reach. The Zarkon, realizing they had been outmaneuvered, began to retreat, their ships scattering into the darkness of space. It wasn't a complete victory, not yet. There was still work to be done, still dangers lurking in the shadows. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ilara allowed herself to believe that they had won, at least for now. As the immediate danger passed, the crew let out a collective breath. The deck was filled with the sound of relieved cheers, but the weight of the battle was still fresh in their minds. The damage to the Leviathan was severe, but they had made it through. Ilara stood among them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and respect for the crew. They had faced unimaginable odds, Yet they had pushed through, relying not just on their technology, but on something far deeper, their spirit. Alara had come to understand something crucial during the battle. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its advanced technology or its powerful weapons. It was their unyielding drive to survive, their ability to adapt, and their refusal to accept defeat. While other civilizations in the galaxy had fallen into complacency or arrogance, humanity had always pushed forward, relentlessly seeking solutions, evolving, and finding ways to survive against the impossible. As she looked around at her new comrades, Alara felt a sense of awe. The galaxy had been watching, and they had just witnessed humanity's true potential. The Zarkon had retreated, but this battle was only a glimpse of what was to come. The fight for the stars had only just begun. There were more threats out there, more challenges to face. But Alara knew that humanity would meet them head-on. Together, they would adapt, learn, and fight. The galaxy may have feared humanity before, but now it would know that they were a force to be reckoned with. As the crew celebrated their hard-won victory, Alara stood tall, her heart swelling with pride. She had found something she hadn't expected when she had first boarded the Leviathan, a sense of belonging, of purpose. And with that came the realization that this was only the beginning. The legacy of humanity, forged in the fires of battle, would endure.